Okay, this is section 2.2 in the PreAlgebra, and I was going to work a couple of problems, some from the sharpening skills, some from the regular section. We did some in class, so I'm going to try to pick different ones. The top ones are just more straightforward. For instance, if they say on number 2, 3 miles is equal to how many feet, you could just say, well, 1 mile is 5,280 feet. So 3 miles would just be 3 times that, and that's the old way you learn to do it. And that's honestly that's okay for most things. And I think you get sometimes it's 24 carry 2, 21, 22, 23 carry your 2, like 17,340 or something like that. And I probably should get a calculator so I can not take up time doing. It's like, I'm sorry, I can't even read my own writing. It's 15,840, okay, when you do that. Now, one of the ways we said we could have done that in class is using our new unit conversion method. I have 3 miles, and I'm going to try to convert it into feet. So I'm going to multiply it by an equal fraction. And if I want to get rid of miles, because in my answer I don't have any miles, so I want miles to go away. And in fractions, how we get things to go away is we have 1 in the numerator, and we could cancel it out with 1 in the denominator. But if I get them to go away, I want to have a feet over here because I'm keeping it with my units to make sure that I've got the right answer and I'm doing the right stuff. It's kind of a way to organize your work. So I could say, well, how many feet are there in a mile? There are 5,280 feet in 1 mile. My miles would cancel out. 5,280 feet over 1 is just still equal to 1. It's just another way the top is equal to the bottom. So this is 1. It just looks a little funky. And so feet, we got feet there, and we could say 3 times 5,280, and we would still get the 15,840. So we have an old way of doing things, and we have a new way. We're just trying to learn to organize our work, because especially when you get into chemistry in 10th grade, you're going to really need another method to deal with the complicated things that you do in conversions. Let's look at another one. What if I had 2 yards? Let me pick one that we didn't do. 11 feet. I want to do one that's harder than that. Let's do 16. We have 8 yards, 18 inches, and we want to convert it to inches. Now the problem is I know I'm going to I've got some inches already. I've got 18 inches, okay? So I'm going to add 18 into how many inches are in a yard. Okay, so I need to change. Let me come down here and let's see how many inches are in a yard. Here's the old way to do it would be say there's 36 inches in a yard, so 36 times 8, you get that number, you're good to go, okay? But here's the new way that we're kind of learning to organize our work. If I want to change yards into inches, I know that I need to get rid of yards, and I want to end up with inches. If I know that 36 inches are a yard, I could write that down and do it right now. But in between yards and inches, there's feet, right? So maybe what I want to do is like just do one little thing at a time. Let's change yards into feet, and then we'll change feet into inches. So here's why I put feet over yards. I want to get rid of the yards. They'd go away. I know feet are in between yards and inches, and I know there are 3 feet in 1 yard, right? But if I look at it now, we look at our units to tell if we're done. I've got yards over yards canceled out, they're gone, but I have feet and I need inches. So I want to get rid of the feet, and in fractions, the way you get rid of things is if it's on the top. If you had one on the bottom, they would cancel out, right? So that's what I want to have happen. But I want to have feet down here so it'll cancel out with the feet that's on the top in the second fraction. But I want to end up with inches in the end, and I still don't have inches, so let me put inches on top and feet on the bottom. Now we know that 12 inches make 1 foot. If I look at it now, all my units, my yards have canceled out, my feet have canceled out, and I have inches, and that's what I want in my answer, so I'm ready to go. 8 times 3, if I just remember we're multiplying all these fractions, so to get the numerator of the answer, we're going to multiply across the top. 8 times 3 is 24, and 24 times 12. We did this one, I think, in class. No, I'm doing it wrong. 48, and then 24. It's 288, okay? So 8 yards is equal to 288 inches. But remember, that's not all I had to do. That was converting the yards into inches, and now I had 18 more inches, and so when I add that together, I get 306 inches. Now, problem solving too has nothing to do with unit conversions. We're going to draw a picture, and this is sea level, and we're going to look at this as a vertical number line. If this is 0, negative numbers would be below it, positive numbers would be above it. It says Mount Kerwood in Michigan is about 1,980 feet above sea level. So here's where Mount Kerwood is. I'll just put Mount C. How many yards above sea level is it? Okay, I'm wrong. It did have conversions in it. How many yards above sea level? So if it's 1,980 feet, and I want to find out how many yards it is, I want to get rid of feet, and I want to end up with my answer in yards. So if I multiply it by a fraction and I put feet on the bottom and yards on the top, I could get the feet to cancel out, and I would end up with my answer in yards, which is what I want. Okay, well, how many feet are in a yard? How many yards in a feet? That doesn't make sense. So how many feet are in a yard? There's 3 feet in 1 yard. So what I would do, I'd say, oh, well, 1 yard is equal to 3 feet. So the bottom, the numerator, and the denominator of this fraction are both equal. So they're really just a big old 1 in a funky form. So I'm not changing the value. I'm just changing the way it looks. I'm giving it a facelift and changing it from feet to yards. So what I would do is it's 1980 times 1 is 1980 on top. I could put this over 1. 1 times 3 is 3. So if I want my answer, I just have to divide 1980 by 3, and that's 660 yards, okay? And it makes sense. There should be less yards than feet. Now they want to know how many inches that is, okay? So I already know how many yards it is. Let me just take since I've already done the yards, let's change that into inches. If I want the yards to cancel out, I'd need 1 on the top and 1 on the bottom. And if I want to end up with inches in my answer, I would need inches on the top so that when I multiply through, I would have inches on my numerator for my units and then nothing in the denominator. I can put 660 over 1 if it makes me feel better to have all fractions. Now, we can't say how many yards are in an inch. That's too confusing. But how many inches are in a yard? Well, I actually should have done something else here. How many inches in a yard? There's 36 inches in a yard. I could have done it that way and found out how many it is. 660 times 3, 36. That would be 23,760. So I could have done, since I had it in yards, I just started from where I had it the last time. That probably is not the easiest way for me to have done this. If you think about it, they gave it to me in feet at the very beginning, so let's do it that way also, just to see that we get the same answer. At the beginning, it was 1980 feet, and they want to know how many inches. So I wanted to end up with inches in my answer. So here's probably an easier way to do that. Again, there's more than one way to do things in math, and a lot of you are thinking different ways, so I'm just going to show you some different ways, and the more that you follow, the better off you'll be. If I want to change feet into inches, that means I want my units of feet to cancel out. Because in a fraction, if I have something on the top and something on the bottom, they cancel out. But in my answer, I want to end up with inches, so I need it to represent inches in the numerator of this fraction. I'm going to make an equal fraction. I'm not going to change the overall value of how much this 1980 feet is. I'm just going to change the way it looks and represent it in inches. So it is, if I think how many inches are in a foot, there's 12 inches in 1 foot. My feet are canceling out. Let me turn 1980 into a fraction by sticking it over 1. So what I would do now is just say, what's 1980 times 12? 1980 times 12. And you're getting 23,760 inches, okay? So I get the same answer no matter how I did it. And it just depended if I wanted to start back at the beginning or if I wanted to start where I left off. I'll stop there just because we could do it another way, but I'll just at least give you some choices here. Okay, so like sharpening skills, we'll do a couple of these. 23 yards is equal to how many inches? So let's start off with the 23 yards. Now I'm gonna multiply by equal fraction. When I get done, I want to have my answer in inches. I don't want to have yards anywhere near it. So in order to do that, I'm going to go ahead and put this 23 yards over 1. I need a yard in the numerator so I can get these yards to cancel out. Well, I could put inches on the top and just do it in less steps, but let's do this. There are feet in between inches and yards, and if I want to do a little bit at a time, I could do this. I could say, how many feet are in a yard? And that would get my answer in feet, and then I could change that into inches. There are 3 feet in 1 yard, right? Okay, so that's in feet, but I don't really want it in feet, do I? I really want it in inches, but at least it made it easy. It's an easy fraction to remember. 3 feet and 1 yard are the same thing. Because I know in class one time today I said how many inches are in a yard, and somebody said 32, and so it's easy to forget. Okay, so we're just sometimes doing it a little at a time just makes it helpful so you don't make as many mistakes. Now if I want to get rid of feet, I'll need it on the bottom so that these units can cancel out. And I want to end up with inches. And so if I multiply what I have so far by 1, I'm still going to have the same amount. I'm just going to change the way it looks. Well, how many inches are in a foot? Well, there's 12 inches in 1 foot. Okay, if you look, my yards have canceled out, my feet have canceled out. I've got my inches that I wanted in my answer, so it's time to multiply. On the top, it's 23. Let me clear my calculator. 23 times 3 is going to be 69. But then if I multiply that by 12, I'm going to get 828 on top, and that's in inches. And on the bottom, 1 times 1 times 1 is 1, and there's no units. And again, when I'm doing these unit conversions, I have to keep up with my units or it just doesn't work. You get lost in the numbers. So this converts over to 828 inches. Let's look at number 6. It looks like a one that this might actually be a good method to use on it. Maybe it would help you see why this works. 3/4 of a mile. Now, a mile, if your unit is miles, you could look at it as miles on top and 1 on the bottom of a fraction, okay? So we could write it this way. And I want to change it over into yards. Now, so when I get done, I want my answer in yards. I wish I had not put that there. All right, so let's see. I do know how many, maybe I don't remember how many yards are in a mile, and maybe I'm confused because I got a fraction here. Well, let me do this. Most people will remember, if I want miles to go away, maybe I get miles to go away and I change it into feet. In 1 mile, there's 5,280 feet. This would give me my answer in feet because my miles have canceled out. But I don't want my answer in feet, do I? I want my answer in yards. So I can get rid of the feet. It's on top of the fraction. If I were to make a fraction and have feet on the bottom, it would get rid of it. And what I really want to end up with is yards on top. So I could say yards on top, feet on the bottom. How many feet are in a yard? Well, there's 3 feet in 1 yard. I hope you can see from this problem that this gives you a way to organize it. If you kind of get lost in what am I supposed to multiply and what am I supposed to divide, this gives you a way to keep up with it. And multiplying fractions isn't so bad because if you remember, you multiply across the top and you multiply across the bottom. We're just canceling out stuff as we can. Now, what I have left is 3 over 4. My miles had canceled out. Then I have 5,280 over 1, and my units there had canceled out. And I have 1 over 3, and then I have the yards here. So that's going to give me my answer in yards. If I really want to, save myself some time here, look at this. The 3 goes into 3 one time, and there's a 3 up here that I could cancel out. It's 1. Those 3 goes into 3 one time, 3 goes into 3 one time. If we multiply across the top, 1 times 5,280 times 1 is 5,280, and there's a yard on the top. And on the bottom, I have 4 times 1 times 1, so it's 4, and then there's no units on the bottom. So in the end, what I really have to do here is say 5,280 divided by 4, and I get 1320. This is 1320, and again, my units is yards. So this is a good example of why this can be a good thing, especially with fractions and stuff. It helps us not have to, I didn't even have to even look at decimals there at all, did I?